So since the College Football Playoff Committee announced that the 5-7 model would be the pathway to the postseason, everyone and their mother seems to be coming up with their way too early projections. How many SEC teams get in? How many Big Ten teams get in? Are we going to be paying attention to the other conferences? Is Notre Dame even a threat as an independent? I think you know where this video is going. This is my way too early 12-team college football playoff prediction. But unlike a lot of other people, there are a few sleeper names on this list. So when you come back in December and realize these are the dozen teams that actually are going to make it to the postseason, don't say I didn't warn you first. But before we dive on in, if you're new here, welcome on into the channel. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below, the ring notification, because we talk college football every single day on this platform. Go ahead and follow me on social media, Twitter, X, Instagram. Slide in the DMs. Ask me questions. I love turning them into one-off videos at Mr. Cole Thompson. Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, your best of bros, college football aficionados, SEC fans, Big Ten fans, AAC fans. I know you exist out there, all about this channel, because we're on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking about our favorite sport daily. And if you want to, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Send me an email about questions that you have for college football moving forward. The way too early college football playoff prediction. So what do we know about this? #1, 4 teams get a bye. These are usually going to be the conference winners. I would say if you're anywhere between 11-1 and 12-0, you're probably going to have to not worry about some things. You get the bye over a team like Notre Dame because you have to play that one extra game. So Notre Dame, I've already made this abundantly clear. Anybody that doesn't believe they're going to be in the playoff because they're not in a conference, until proven otherwise, you're just wasting precious air. So go ahead and dial that back a little bit. They're just never going to get a first-round bye, which also they seem very content with. Also, a group of 5 schools getting in. I would say until further notice, 1 group of 5 schools getting in. And you could probably just pigeonhole them anywhere between 10, 11, and 12 on the radar. Let's go ahead and start breaking it down. The first 4 teams getting a bye, in my opinion. #1, Ohio State. Big Ten champion. I'm not sure if they lose a game next year. On paper, they shouldn't. You have a wide receiver in Emeka Egbuka who's about ready to follow the exact same path as every other wide receiver that came before him. Breakout year in his final season, eventually becomes a first-round talent. Garrett Wilson did it. Chris Olave did it. Jack Jigba did it as a sophomore, not a junior. And Marvin Harrison Jr. might be the most polished prospect we've seen at the position. They have an offensive line that's returning an egregious amount of talent. You're also upgrading, in my opinion, from left tackle. You have a 1-2 combination in your backfield with a run tandem that is probably the most lethal in the history of the sport, at least in recent memory, and a top 10 defense returning. James Laurinaitis, former 3-time All-American, is now your linebackers coach. That's going to give more time for Jim Knowles to dial up schemes in a 3-safety set with the new addition of Caleb freaking Downs, of all people. Yeah, I'm doubling down that Ohio State is probably not losing a game. They're probably also getting the #1 seed. Georgia, #2 for me. Look, until proven otherwise, somebody has to knock them off the pedestal. Georgia remains the favorite in the SEC. Here's the thing about Georgia. Next season, you look at their schedule. You look at the games on the radar. Alabama, you look at Texas, you look at Tennessee, you look at the Florida matchup. You can say to yourself, they earned their right to get to the SEC championship game. And they earned their right for a first-round bye. They played Clemson to open up the start of the year. You don't know what Clemson's going to be. What if the Tigers come out of nowhere and say, hey, look, we just took an offseason. Now we have Garrett Riley and Kate Klubnik on the same page. Oh, look at that. Now we're really good again. You hold your own against everybody. You've earned your right into the CFP and to a first-round bye. Utah, #3 team. It's weird to say that. It's weird to say because if you see the 12, but you expect the PAC, not the BIG next to it. But they are going to be big in the Big 12. I would be very shocked to see another team make as minuscule as an impact early on as Utah will, because they're built for it. They bring back a veteran quarterback that's now on his 19th season in college football, a tight end that's on his 17th season in college football. Cam Rice and Brayton Kuthi are about ready to torch the Big 12. They always have good defense, and Kyle Whittingham's the most underappreciated coach of the 2000s. The wisdom on this staff is beyond baffling. Like, you look at what has been at Utah. It's a very, very unique situation. Many people don't leave Salt Lake City. They very much love being a part of the Utah Utes program. And now you get to bring that veteranship into the postseason picture. Very hard for me not to say that they are going to be a favorite. Maybe 12-1, 11-2, but still a favorite in the Big 12. Last but not least, Florida State. Hey, They're still the favorites as far as I'm concerned in the ACC. I got to see it from Miami. I got to see it from North Carolina. I got to see it from NC State. I want to see it from even Clemson back in the conversation. This is another year. Listen, you went out, you scoured the transfer portal, you have some veteran talent returning, you brought over DJU. If anybody knows DJU, it has to be Mike Norvell. I think the schedule is probably going to lead to you not being undefeated, but maybe this is like a, hey, we're sorry about last season for the playoff committee. You get a bye in the first round. So those teams don't have anything to worry about for the first round. They don't get to host a playoff game. They get to relax at home. Everyone's at home. Everyone's going to stadiums. So what about the stadium series? For starters, I think number 5 is Oregon. Yeah, the newcomers in the Big Ten, guess what? They are not ready to play second fiddle. They are probably the only threat, in my opinion, right now to go toe-to-toe with Ohio State in terms of roster construction, in terms of veteranship, in terms of talent offensively. They both bring in a veteran quarterback. One gets Will Howard, one gets Dylan Gabriel, who basically is just left-handed Bo Nix. You have Tess Johnson back. You feel like you might have upgraded just a smidge at wide receiver with the addition of Evan Stewart over Troy Franklin. You have a stellar defense. You have an elite offensive line, and you have a coach that knows defensive schematics. Very hard pressed to say that Oregon is not going to be a favorite in the Big Ten. I expect them in Indianapolis. And so there is a legit shot where Ohio State wins that game. They win another game during the regular season. This leads to 2 losses. And just maybe, hear me out, Ohio State and Oregon meet up for a third time. Texas, number 6. Look, Texas is probably going to lose a game next year. I don't know where. I don't know when. They got Michigan as part of their out-of-conference schedule. Does that put them at 11-2 with a loss in the SEC championship game? Or do maybe they get a win over Georgia in the SEC title game, which would give them the bye, and then Georgia moves down to 6? The offense is going to be humming. You look at what they brought in this offseason, I view it very similar to the 2020 offense at Alabama, with so much speed and a graceland of room for you to gallop at DKR. Defensively, you're going to be sound. I think that you're only going to get better with Steve Sarkisian as he gets more comfortable. And the talent, the thing about Texas that has always been so enamoring to me is the talent at this point is being properly prepared for the next level. You look at this Texas team, they've always been able to bring in 4-star and 5-star talent, but they haven't been able to develop it. They've always seen players leave Austin not as well equipped for the NFL as they should have been when they walked in. I think that's the biggest difference between Steve Sarkisian, Tom Herman, and Charlie Strong. The results paved the way for them to be able to get wins, but because of the sturdiness and the attitude and the enigma that is Longhorn football underneath Sark, that's why you're hearing about them getting in the first round conversation. Notre Dame, guys, Notre Dame is making the playoff if they go 11-1. They're making the playoff probably if they go 10-2. And they may not host a playoff game in the Stadium Series, but they're going to be in the dance. They're a big brand. They carry a lot of weight with NBC. And more importantly, they're a roster that if you look at the schedule, depending on who they play, you may say to yourself every year, well, that's not a winnable schedule. But their one loss comes to number 7 USC. Are you really going to penalize them for not being in a conference, but they still play against quality competition like Ohio State, like Michigan, like Clemson, like Florida State, like a team such as, I've already said before, you could throw in Oregon, they've played Georgia before, USC on the schedule every year. They have an offense. I'm very excited to see what Mike Denbrock does with a quarterback in Riley Leonard. I like the additions that they brought in at wide receiver. Lost some names, but still recouped, regrouped, replenished. They finished top 10 in recruiting. They have one of the best recruiting classes moving forward. And Marcus Freeman's him. Plain and simple. Marcus Freeman is the guy that has brought in to what South Bend is in ways that Brian Kelly never could. It's not just about recruiting. It's also about NIL, and he's embraced that. He's using that to an advantage. It's a reason why Jack Schwarbeck, I think, is very excited about the future of Fighting Irish football. They're going to host a playoff game, and I'm going to tell you this much. Moving forward, Notre Dame is going to host a lot of playoff games. They're going to be a top 10 team, and they're probably going to be leaning more so toward top 5. But because of that bye, they won't be able to go ahead and get past it. 8, Ole Miss. This is the last team I have hosting a playoff game. Offensively, fundamentally sound as all hell. Defensively, upgrade at every single position this offseason, including the run defense, which is going to be monumental. Your schedule, very relaxed in my opinion. One major game I'm circling, it's the Georgia one. You get past Georgia, I feel like that you're in pretty good hands. You play well against Georgia, I feel like you're in pretty good hands. You avoid Alabama, you avoid Texas A&M. There is a very decent shot that you look at Ole Miss, 11-1, 10-2. 10-2 probably means you're hosting a playoff game. 9, Penn State. This is the year. Look, you have an easy schedule. You don't play two of the major proponents that are going to be favorites in the Big Ten, Oregon and Michigan. You're off their radar. You brought in a number one wide receiver. In my opinion, you upgraded offensive coordinator with Andy Kolenicki. He does wonders with quarterbacks from his time at Buffalo, Wisconsin Whitewater. Jalen Daniels and Jason Bean would like a word after what anybody says about Andy Kolenicki. Defensively, look, Tom Allen, really good defensive mind. Not a great head coach, maybe a slightly below average head coach, but defensively, very sound. Still have Abdul Carter. Still have some very young, promising names in the secondary at linebacker. This is a team that can be a 10-2 roster. 10-2 is no longer a death sentence. It could be 11-1 roster. Is this the year that you finally see progression every step along the way? You feel like that this is the moment you're about ready to take over. Miami, number 10. Look, I've made this clear. I am riding the Miami hype train. It would be foolish of me at this point to be talking about the Hurricanes with such hype, such gusto, such pizzazz, and not put them in my playoff. I believe that they can be the Texans of 2024. I really do. I love the addition of what you bring into a quarterback in Cam Ward. I love that you still have Xavier Renfro still on the roster. I love what you have on the offensive line. It's another year of aging, development, timing. Mario knows how to recruit, knows how to develop offensive linemen. Do you feel like what you're getting with Shannon Dawson and a new quarterback who does have some fumble issues, but still cannon of an arm, makes Uncle Rico look flaccid? Do you feel like that's an upgrade? Do you feel like your schedule is winnable? Games against Florida, Florida State. Do you feel like you can at least split that series? I think if you're 10-2, I think if you're 11-1, you're not leaving Miami out. They're too big of a brand, too big of a personality, and it would lead to more diversity when it comes to the CFP. The one thing that we don't want to see is always SEC Big Ten teams. Miami, big roster, big program, big brand. They would get a big time cut of making it into the CFP. Number 11, Missouri. Look, this is a 4-team race in my opinion. I would actually say, you know what, 5. I'll go 5 teams right here. Number 1, without question, is Alabama. Number 2 is LSU. Tennessee has got to be on that radar. I think Oklahoma also belongs in, and Missouri. Right now, simply because of the offensive production returning, not losing Kirby Moore, and I do think that Corey Batoon, the new defensive coordinator, is not going to be an upgrade over Blake Baker, but I do think that the defense is going to be sound, especially with adding in a cornerback like Toriano Pride. I'm giving the nod to Mizzou. It's very close. You tell me that this is Tennessee, not going to be shocked. You tell me that it's Alabama, not going to be shocked. You tell me it's Ole Miss because of Alabama or Tennessee or LSU is number 8. I won't be shocked. There is going to be a 4th team from the SEC. I look at the offensive consistency that's coming back. I look at Eli Drinkwitz having an offseason to prep his defense for what he's lost. Go ahead and give me the Tigers just slightly over everybody else. And the Group of 5 champion, Tulane. Look, death, taxes, Cole Thompson hyping up John Summerall. That's just going to be the case. I think that he is the next big name in this sport. I am very excited to see what happens in New Orleans. You lose Willie Fritz, one of the smartest cats in all of college football, and you don't upgrade, but you definitely make an idle lateral move with the addition of John Summerall. And he can go ahead and count his sums as long as he wants until a job that he knows he can't pass up is made available. That's the beauty of being in the AAC, but more importantly, that's the beauty of being in a conference in a city like New Orleans where you get to pick and choose where you want to be. Tulane got it in talent this offseason. Yeah, they lose Michael Pratt, but I still like what they were able to bring in and Ty Thompson. And the other thing that's really important here, imagine if they're able to get one upset win. They got 2 major games on the radar, one against Kansas State at home, one in Norman against Oklahoma. Can they get a win in one of those games? If so, that's going to be the most prominent win at the Group of 5 level this year, at least in my personal opinion. Both these teams have young quarterbacks. Both could finish top 15. Imagine if Tulane gets that nod. That's just, to me, a match made in heaven. Playoff round, first round. Remember, we have the byes. Tulane would travel to Autzen Stadium. Mizzou would go back to the Big 12 with their new SEC rival in Austin. Miami, Convicts versus Catholics 2.0 or 4.0 or 6.0, whatever the hell it is. That's at Notre Dame Stadium. Touchdown Jesus is looking over the Hurricanes and the Irish for a playoff game. in their own backyard. Just imagine saying that to yourself like 10 years ago. Can there be a moment where actually we have those shirts properly licensed to where that's basically filling the stadiums? Like, it's all white, except you have on one shirt, it says Miami or Convict in the Miami green, and then the other shirt says Catholic in the burgundy gold. Like, just imagine what that stadium looks like. And of course, you can flip-flop these if you really want, but Penn State travels down to Ole Miss. They take on the Rebels. That's, again, just a rematch of what you saw last year. Is this where you don't get the opt-outs, and now James Franklin can say, no, we're the top tier 2 team in the Big Ten? Or is this where Ole Miss says, no, we're the top tier 2 team in the SEC? In fact, we're the top tier 2 team in college football. That's really what this battle is. It's the battle of the tier 2s. I think they've always to be a betting man right now. Tulane loses to Oregon. Best of luck to you, John Summerall. You know this is going to be the case. Texas holds on against Missouri. I think it's a close matchup offensively early, but Texas pulls away late. Miami does not get the upset over Notre Dame. And as much as I do think that Penn State finally getting in the playoff is a huge win, this Ole Miss team is special in my opinion, especially with what you added in defensively. It's hard pressed for me to say that they're not going to be in the postseason, at least past the first round. Round 2, Ohio State would host Ole Miss in the neutral site location because they were the number 1 seed. Georgia would get Notre Dame as the number 7 seed. Texas, because they are the 6th seed, would play against Utah. Hey, look at that. Cam Rising going up against his former school. Another great storyline. And Florida State versus Oregon in the final matchup as 4 versus 5. These are great games, in my opinion. You have the offensive mastermind in Lane Kiffin going up against Chip Kelly. You got Georgia playing against Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman versus Kirby Smart, 2 defensive wizards that would be able to set the tone with quarterbacks that probably are going to be drafted. Utah takes on Texas. It's like old school master Jedi mind thinking and the new up-and-comer. Like, we talk about tattoos all the time in my life. Anybody that knows new school tattoos going up against a classical trained tattoo artist, like, that's the baffling differences between these two squads. And Florida State versus Oregon. Look, these are, I think, 2 teams that are going to be major prophets with the NIL era, and this is going to be a matchup that we consistently see. Give me Ohio State over Ole Miss. Give me Georgia over Notre Dame. Utah plays close once again, but something about Texas. I'm telling you, man, they're built for the big lights. They're built for the SEC, and I got our first upset. Give me Oregon over Florida State. I think that this one's close, but I think that Oregon has that next level juice at quarterback slightly over a place where actually, DJ, you just spent the last season in the state. Playoff round 3, Ohio State versus Oregon, Georgia versus Texas. Now we get mastermind Chip Kelly versus Dan Lanning. Oh my, popcorn. Literally cinema. Like, there's not going to be a movie that comes out next year that could lead to this battle. Jim Knowles versus Chip Kelly. You got a defensive mind. I mean, you got Dan Lanning versus, Jim Knowles versus Chip Kelly. You got offensively Ryan Day versus Dan Lanning. What do you make of it? That's cinema. And then now the 2 favorites, because Alabama still is on the outside looking in for some people, Georgia versus Texas, SEC matchup. Guess what? It's a rematch. This time neutral site location. Does that mean Georgia, if they got a win, would be able to win a 3rd time potentially against the Texas Longhorns? For me, I think Oregon plays a lot closer than Texas will, but I still think Ohio State wins, and I think Georgia wins. And naturally, we have the national championship that many people have projected. Many people are circling on their calendars. It's just a longer pathway to what we would have had in the BCS, in my opinion. Ohio State, the most complete team in college football. Georgia, the most complete team in the SEC. What they return in talent, what they added in via the portal, what type of recruiting classes they had, number 1 defensive player versus number 1 offensive player, the mastermind of Kirby Smart versus a combination of Chip Kelly and Ryan Day. What does that look like? What type of enigma is that going to be? Seriously, that's something that you want to be paying attention to. And ultimately, this is the Caleb Downs Bowl, where Caleb Downs could have gone to Georgia, which would have led to them winning a national championship, but he plays for Ohio State, which maybe leads to them winning a national championship. To me, perfect playoff scenario, top to bottom. Let me know in the comments section, what do you think is the perfect playoff scenario? Make sure that you're following me on social media, Twitter, X, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you see fit. Continue to subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of bros, college football aficionados everywhere about this channel. And for all great other insight, go ahead and make sure that you hit the ring notification. That way you keep up with everything that we're doing here over on this platform. I'm Thompson. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time, folks. Later.